Good morning, everybody. Today I wanted to cover displacement maps and show you the difference between those and bump maps. And there is a considerable difference, although in some respects they kind of do the same thing, but they don't. So that's the topic of today's lecture. Also, I wanted to let you know on Wednesday, I just found out this morning I need to cancel our webinar on Wednesday, and I will send out an email. And that I have some a medical thing that I got to take care of on Wednesday, so there won't be any webinar on Wednesday. Then, in addition to that, just a reminder that everybody should be finishing up their toy project and starting on your final assignment. If you want to know what to do for the final, there are lots of good examples on my website that I can talk about a week from today, or if we have time at the end of today, we'll do that. To show you lots of different examples. It really depends on what your principal interest is. If you want to use the videos that we watched on head modeling and organic modeling, if you want to repeat what he did, that is fine by me. If you are working in Blender and you find a series of tutorials online that allow you to work on a project that's a little bit more complex or advanced, it could be an interior environment similar to what I've done with my gallery. It could also be a character model. It can be, Brenda, you were working on the donut. If you want to do that entire series of lessons, I am open to that, so that you'll wind up doing the coffee cup and saucer and everything, all the details for that donut. That would be a great assignment. So it's really open-ended. I just want it to be ambitious. So you will have the remainder of the semester to work on it, and it will be due the last week of class. Okay? So that's catching up with everybody, let you know what we're doing. So today, as I said, bump maps and displacement maps. It's mostly displacement maps, but I want to show you the difference between the two. So let's start by just making a simple polygon. Okay, that's it. That's all I've done here using the box tool. Flat, one-sided, nothing special about it. And you'll notice that the little stick that's sticking out of this, I don't know that I've really talked about this yet, but this indicates the surface normal. That's the direction that the surfaces are facing. So for example, if I hit F, notice it shows you that there is a polygon there, but the surface normal is facing in the opposite direction. And if I hit F again, that lets you know that it's there. Bump maps don't affect points, they affect the surface normal. So let me show you what a bump map does. Or we already have, we used it in the ripple in the window. But I want to show you something that pertains to what we're doing today with displacement maps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Q for a new surface. And I'll just, I may already have something here. No, I don't. So I'll go ahead and I'll name it, and I'll name it ground. Okay, because pretend that this is kind of like a dirt, on the ground of an exterior environment. Okay, so I've named the color, but there's no, it's flat as a pancake, or as flat as glass. There's no ripples or anything in that. Well, I can assign a bump map to it here in Modeler, but I won't be able to see it. So what I need to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this, and I'm going to send it over to layout. Okay, so let's go ahead and synchronize layout. And I'm going to send the object to layout. And that's what it looks like. It's just, very simple. Okay, nothing special. Okay, just flat. Well, if I want to, I can go ahead and I can bring up the surface editor. So let me do that. And we can see in here, we have, oh, I did have another one. I named it dirt. So this one is ground. So I'll go ahead and I'll use that because I was doing a test before the class just to make sure everything was working. And so what I'll do now, since this is ground, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add down here at the bottom. I could use double-sided if I wanted, but I don't need to. Instead of BSDF, I'm going to switch to standard. And what I want to do right now under standard is right here where it says bump. I'm going to go ahead and apply a bump map. Now, a bump height by default is set at 100%. But depending on how many bump maps you have, this controls the general appearance of all the bump maps that you have. So I'm going to leave that at 100. And if you want them of various bump maps to be of different heights or different percentages, then they would be controlled under the individual surfaces. So for right now, I'm going to go ahead and instead of an image map, and we will be watching a video on how you can use image maps to create some really beautiful terrain, mountains and valleys and things like that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use a procedural texture. And you can see already by just using turbulence, it appears to affect the surface. And it looks bumpy, but not truly bumpy. It looks like an image has been projected onto it. From a separate angle, it would look a little bit more, from a distance, it would look bumpy. But that's where what we have here. So there's our surface map. There's our bump map. So now I want to switch and I want to show you what displacement maps do. Displacement maps actually affect points. So right now, because I have a very basic, simple polygon, that's not going to work for us. I need to subdivide it and to add lots of little points so that they can, they can be manipulated individually. Because if I were to apply a displacement map for that right now, it just wouldn't work. And how you apply displacement maps is that inside, let me switch from BPR to wireframe so we can see that you can see that the object is selected, okay, as opposed to the camera or the lights or anything else. But where you do that is that you have to make sure that the object is selected. You make sure that the properties panel is visible. And in the properties panel, you can see that I can come down here and there is a little area here for a displacement map. If I double click on it, you can see that I can add one here, what looks very similar to what I had done with a bump map. But if I apply it, and I apply it along the y-axis because that's where the green is going right now. If I go ahead and I apply, let's do the same thing. Instead of image map, I'll say procedural. And here is the very same map that I applied before, which was procedural map, and it was turbulence. But if I switch now from wireframe to VPR, I really don't see anything. Nothing is really happening. I mean, it's changing, but I don't see what I want. Okay, so let's go back and let me go ahead and let me just clear the scene. Okay, that will probably be the easiest thing. I don't want to save it. Let's go back to normal. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete this polygon. And it's just easier to start over. Excuse me. Make a box. Or a flat plane, as it were. Make a pretty good size one. I'm sorry, got a tickle in my throat. And now what I'll do with the numeric requester, I'll go ahead and I'll add segments along the X and the Z. Okay, so I'm just going to crank those up, add a boatload of them. Because the more geometry you add, the smoother the displacement that I'll get. And also something that you might want to note is that displacement maps can be animated. So for example, in 3D modeling animation, what you may have seen, like when a character flexes their muscles or something and the muscles bulge and stuff, that would be a displacement map usually. It would be taking place over time. But when the arm bends up, then the muscle would be displaced. Go. That would be one way to do it. There are other ways of doing that. Anyway, so again, I've got my my flat plane here, and it is, but it's highly subdivided. There's a lot of, it's really creative with a lot of separate smaller polygons now. So I'll go ahead and I'll hit Q again. I'll just go ahead and I'll add ground. That will be the one that I want to use there, okay? So now that I've added that, now I'm going to send it over to layout. Okay. So I'll go ahead and I'll send the object to layout. Come on. It's taking a couple of minutes. It shouldn't have to be this slow. I don't know what else I got going on here that's causing the problem. I guess because lots of things going on. So let me go ahead and let's make sure I'm looking at camera view, which I am, and I'm going to close the surface editor and object properties, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move the camera just so I can, move in closer. So I'm going to move the camera a little bit closer, like so, and I'm going to right click to bring it down so I can see the flat plane. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move this environment light out of here, and here's my key distant light, and I'm from behind the camera at the moment. So what I want to do is I want to, with the object selected, I'm going to go ahead and under the properties panel, I'm going to do what I had suggested before. I'm going to add a displacement map. But I haven't added, you can either add images, procedurals, or gradients. And gradients we haven't talked about. That's a bit more advanced. But if I double click here, this is a very similar window to what I had before. And I can apply an image map. Or in this particular instance, I'm going to start with a procedural texture. And notice how it's affecting it. So I can create little mountains and valleys. This could be a blanket with ripples in it. It could be a lake, that I've tossed a rock into and it's created ripples in the water. You can do all sorts of things. So now what I need to do, because this looks kind of chunky, doesn't it? I can see the individual polygons, but if I wanted to smooth all of that out, then I do need to go back to the surface editor, and I need to, for the ground, I need to turn on smoothing. Now you can see that bumpiness that I have going on here. And we can control the height of it, but the only place that you can see this is in layout. If I switch back to, if I go ahead and I close this, and in addition to the displacement map, I can add bump maps on that as well. So for example, let me go ahead and show you. Let's go ahead and, because right now it's kind of a smooth surface, but it's the actual surface itself is smooth, but it looks like it's following an undulating terrain here. But if I bring the surface editor back up, let me go ahead and close this. So here's our ground texture. And instead of principled BSDF, again, I'm going to switch to, we will get to, next week, we'll get to the node editor, which is really a better way to go in many respects, but it is much more complex. So that takes that away, that color, and I'll go back and I'll add, the brown texture again, and that will be just fine. Let's go ahead and close it. So that's brown, but let's go ahead now and let's add the bump to this. So remember, bump maps affect the surface normals. So what I can do now, again, I could add an image map, but I'm going to go back to the procedural texture. And instead of turbulence, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add something a little bit different. I'm going to add crumple. Okay. So there's a bunch of them under procedurals, but I'll go ahead and I'm just going to leave the default surface for right now. And again, because I just have textured solid, I don't see any of that, but as soon as I switch to VPR, notice how it's looking, even within that, you see how it looks a little bit wrinkled in here and a kind of a crumply surface. So you're adding two effects onto that. But the displacement map is really what affects the huge undulating surface here. So those are displacement maps. That's pretty nifty. Now let me show you a different one. For example, what if we wanted ripples in water? We can do that. So let me bring this back up. Let's go ahead and the properties of that object, and I'll double click on displacement map. Let's go ahead and here. And so instead of turbulence, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch to, let me see if I can find there's a bunch of them. I'm going to try ripples too. Okay, now that doesn't look very ripply, does it? But what I need to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change the texture value so it's a little bit softer, you know, but it's like lots of little bumps in there. And instead of 3 sources, I'm just going to use 1 source for right now. Okay. Instead of the wavelength, let's go ahead and of 0.5, let's go ahead and change that to, and let's bring that down a little bit. So it's a little bit, or maybe I need to, yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll bring it down a bit more. As I'm doing that, you're gradually seeing the ripples, or the ripple in the water. You probably want to change the color of the texture too. So let me keep changing that. Let's change the texture value a little bit too. Reduce that just a little bit. Takes a little bit of tweaking so I can actually see this happen over time. That's looking better. And the same with the wavelength. Let's go ahead and reduce that. Oh, I got to take the bump map off because that's kind of messing things up. So let me bring the surface editor back up and I'm going to change it from dirt to water. So I'll make it a nice blue color. So let's bring the surface editor up. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove the bump map. So hold down the Shift key and click on T. And now you can begin to see the nice smooth ripples in here. Okay, and I'll change the color from brown to a nice, I'll just change it to this blue here. Okay. So there's still some tweaking that I need to do. And if I want, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move the camera up a little bit. So let's do that so we can see this a little bit better. So I'll go ahead and switch from here, move, and I'll move the camera up. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off VPR for real quick. I can get a better shot of this. I'll move the camera up a little bit, and then I'll hit rotate, and I'll rotate it down a little bit so you'll be able to see this a little bit better. Now we can go back to VPR, and you can see what I'm doing here. And that looks a little bit better. I think it still needs a little bit of tweaking, but you can now see the ripples in the water. So again, this is affecting not the surface normals, but it's affecting the actual points on there. Okay. So those are displacement maps. Now the real fun will be in a minute, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn off recording or pause it. Excuse me. I have a video that I'm going to play that's on YouTube that I will add to our class series of YouTube. So there will be this one that I'm recording now, and there will be that one that you can, it's already on there, but it'll make it easier for you to find. And in this particular instance, he's going to use an image map to create mountains and valleys. It's very simple, but you do need to use a 2D imaging program like Photoshop. So if you don't know Photoshop, it's going to be kind of hard to do. Anyway, let me go ahead and pause the recording here. So don't go away. I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording. So there you have it. I showed you the video on how to use images to create displacement maps for mountains and valleys and that sort of thing. There's a number of other videos that are available too on YouTube that you're welcome to look at. But these, my little demonstration and his, I think give you a pretty good overview of some of the basics that I'm thinking you might want to use for your final project, especially if you have an outdoor scene. You might want to, create some mountains and valleys or that sort of thing to place your character or your object or whatever it is that you're making. So that's pretty much it. That's really all I had to show you today. So again, a reminder, so we're not going to be meeting today for more than maybe 45 minutes or so, not the full hour. And again, a reminder on that on Wednesday, I have to cancel the webinar. Again, I have some medical issues that I need to deal with, but we will continue next Monday with some more stuff. We will have be watching videos on more advanced surfacing techniques is what we're going to do. And I will make them all available for you on our playlist for this semester. So unless there aren't any questions, oh yeah, again, repeat, make sure that you're finishing up your toy. Some of you have, most of you haven't. So make sure that that gets completed and turned in. And again, think carefully about what you want to do for your final project because you will be working the remainder of the semester on it. Yeah, the final project, again, a couple of things. I'll talk more about it later, but I can talk a little bit about it now since we have time, is that it's open-ended. Again, you can do another toy, you can do an environment, you can do a product, you can review the head modeling videos that we watched, and if you want to try that yourself and create the same model he did, you're welcome to. If you can find examples of other models that you want to give it a go, I'm open to that. But there are lots of good examples that I've placed on my website. So maybe we can look at that for a moment. Let me go ahead and let's do that. So I'm going to go ahead here. Now let's go to Kirk's classes so we can review and see some of the examples that we have here. Let me jump to, there we go. Some things about the final assignment. Okay, I want it to be a good example of your capabilities in modeling, what you've learned in surfacing, and also pay close attention to the lighting and the entire composition. So one of the things that you'll notice with this person's final project is that they simply varied the colors and used the same model. So they, created multiple models from one and then altered the surfacing. But this is, I think is a good example of what 3D modeling can do, is that you can view it from any angle, any perspective. And so that's what they've done. They basically created one model, but they've displayed it from a number of different angles so that you can see this really nicely. And a really strong composition, good lighting with soft shadows and name it. It really highlights all of the skills that she learned in this class. So that would be one good example. This one, Gabriel did. He likes anime, and he did a little toy, and the same thing. One model that he duplicated and then applied different colors to, so different surfacing, and then came back in here. And then when he rendered it from multiple angles so that you really get a full sense of the 3D properties. What I would like you to do when you turn in your final model is that you turn it in turn in two renderings, so that at least two renderings, so that we can see it from different angles, that perhaps you've taken a lot of care in working out a lot of details. So maybe you want a close-up shot and then one that's overall, or just from two significant angles to see it. This is another good example of just something that's kind of boxy, but it's a, old style kind of Game Boy by Nintendo. And here they did the box in addition to the toy itself with all of its indents and everything. You should be able to do. Very nice job. Jacob did that a couple semesters ago. This is certainly more complicated. Benjamin was one of my more advanced students. It took the time to really understand organic modeling. And so he did both the plane and the character for his final project. Okay, but again, it's a good example. If you just did one of those two, I would be happy, but he did both. Okay, this is a good example. This she did for her toy, but it would be acceptable for a final project as well. Brianna did a very boxy kind of old style toy that was a camera, but paid really close attention to detail, by more complex projection maps, okay, by adding the details of the fillets so that there were slightly rounded corners. She used the extrude tool for the type. Lots of nice features. It's well lit. She chose to use that bowl that I showed you about, the light stage, to give the overall image nice overall even and controlled lighting. And that, she wasn't afraid to move the camera in, so she got a nice tight shot of it. So that's another good example of a product. This one, Victor, again, he was one of my more advanced students. And again, super example of organic modeling for his character. And he kind of went above board and he did a little, robotic dog as well. But again, if you did either one or the other, that would be a great final project. And notice he added a nice environment to it. This was done a long, long time ago, but it's one of the best products that I've ever gotten. That Johnny Nader did. Couldn't look more realistic. It's a really, really nice job that he did on this watch. Combination of a lot of different things, to make it, but it's all very doable for us if you really take your time. Okay. An exterior scene that I still like. Samuel did this a long time ago. Not too many people have done environments, but this is one of an exterior. You get the volumetric lighting and the brick walls and everything. You get a nice night scene that has a lot of ambiance and a lot of, you really feel, put, the basic elements in here, including a newspaper in the foreground and that sort of thing. So this would be another good example of a final project. Any one of these work really well. Again, a creature. Timothy McKinney did this quite a while ago. And that would be, another good one. Again, maybe if you did one chess piece for your toy assignment, now you want to do the entire chessboard. So you'd have to do, how many chess pieces are there? There you have your, your pawns, and then you have your rooks, but there's two of those, and then you have your knights, so that would be three. And then you'd have your bishops, and you have your queens, and you have your kings. So that's six. So that's six different basic models plus the chess piece, and then applying different surfaces to them. And a really important aspect to this is a nice tight camera shot that you're really in the area of the, the chessboard itself, and at the size and the scale of the chess pieces. Again, adding some volumetric lighting to that to give it, really a strong feel of space. Adding some reflectivity and that sort of thing, so there's interaction between the pieces and the surfaces. Again, that would be a possibility. It would be a good one. This one Jessica did not that many semesters ago. And again, she didn't do the background, but she integrated her robot into the background quite nicely. Really, really a nice job. Really beautiful. So that would be another good example. There are a number of people that like doing robots. Here's an example that Poonam did not too many semesters ago of an interior of a gallery. Now remember, when you do a shot like this, she didn't have to do the ceiling. She didn't have to do the back 2 walls. She only did the floor and 2 walls, and then put her artwork in here and set it up. So that's a nice approach. I think she won an award for that in the student show. And this one was unique, and this was done a long time ago by Lawrence Irvin. And it's a futuristic scene. So I still like showing it because of its unique properties. So I think, I'm trying to give you an overall, kind of with variety of different options that you'll have for your final project. But as I said, I do want it to be ambitious, so that you'll first, you should have at least 6 weeks, close to 6 weeks to work on it, maybe 5. So you spend a couple of weeks on the modeling, a week or 2 on the surfacing, and then a week or so on the lighting and the final renders. Okay, so you divide your time up. Don't put it all in all of your eggs in one basket and lose sight that you have to deal with all of those elements. Okay, that's it. Oh no, I got the whales. I forgot about that. Yeah, Carlos did a nice job of that too. I have another nice one too of whales that we've done in a more recent semester. I didn't put that up yet. And I've had more robots and stuff that I just haven't added that are just really, really nice. Okay, so that give you guys some ideas for your final project. And again, I repeat, make sure that you get your toy assignment in sooner rather than later, so I can get it graded and returned to you. And if there aren't any more questions for today, then we'll wrap it up. And again, I'll remind you that we will not have a webinar this Wednesday. I have medical things that I have to attend to, and I will send you an email Tuesday night to remind you. And next week, next Monday, we will continue with advanced surfacing techniques. There's a number of videos that I have on YouTube. They're already available to all of you if you look in my playlists. It's just LightWave videos, but I will be showing them to you in class. Ways of, and it will also introduce the node editor into that too. So like fast skin, car paint, dialectics for glass and things like that. For different materials that you can apply that really and strongly enhance the models that you'll be building. Okay. In addition to that, the lighting and that sort of thing, they all play an important role. As I said, what I've done with my gallery, very simple, but the lighting is what I think really brings it home. There is a lot of detailed work up in the ceiling and in the floors and the different frames that I've made and that sort of thing, but it's all my artwork that's inside here. And I did buy a character to put him in here. I didn't build him myself. I just simply bought that to be able to show scale, give you an idea that this sculpture here, if it were in a gallery, it would be quite large. And that these pieces would be quite large too. And that the gallery is pretty good size. It's probably 30 feet wide by maybe 60 feet deep. Okay. So let me go ahead and I'm going to pause the recording. I'm going to say goodbye for today. Don't leave just yet. Let me go ahead and take roll. So don't log out yet. But I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye for now. And I'm going to pause because this is for the people who aren't here for the live webinar. So